Margaret Thatcher formally submits her resignation to the Queen and leaves Downing Street for the last time. Czechoslovakian Communist Party gives up monopoly on political power, allowing free elections to be held the following month. This change was in response to other Eastern Bloc countries forcing the issue in neighboring countries. American-born Lady Astor, the wife of Viscount Astor, won a seat in the House of Commons. She is an advocate of some form of prohibition similar to the American model. The relationship between Great Britain and Greece was very strained at this time. In fact, these two countries were soon to not be on good terms if former Greek cabinet member executions were to be carried out. In fact, the 6 former members of the Greek cabinet were executed because they were accused of treason. An agreement was soon to be made between governmental factions battling for control in Cuba. It was believed that peace would be achieved in this country at this time. The Coconut Grove nightclub in Boston, a former speakeasy, burns to the ground in the worst nightclub fire in U.S. history, killing 492 people. The fire began when a canopy of artificial palm fronds caught fire, and because of the design and number of highly flammable drapes spread quickly through the club, and due to the poor design and blocked entrances, many patrons could not get out. The fire did have one positive effect, which was that fire regulations throughout the country were changed, which banned flammable decorations and required all swinging exit doors to open outwards. The new regulations also required exit signs to be visible at all times. U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and Soviet leader Joseph Stalin meet in Tehran for a 3-day meeting to discuss Operation Overlord, which included D-Day landings in Normandy, France for May 1944. The landings were delayed and took place on the 6th of June 1944 as part of the final strategy for the war against Nazi Germany and its allies. As part of the meeting, a pledge was made by the 3 countries to recognize Iran's independence. The soldier to plant the first bomb in Tokyo sent notice to his wife of this event via Associated Press, a journalist company. The reason why AP was transmitting this notice to his wife is because there were no telephones or telegraphs to use for the time being. Not only that, airmail was expected to take over a week. It was highly likely that as soon as the United States arrives in Bermuda with Britain and France, that a serious request would be made. The plan was to cower, and plans that the Russians would carry out to stall the European Army project. The British government has released further details of its proposed petrol rationing to begin next month. Personal drivers will be allowed sufficient petrol to drive 200 miles per month, or about 2 gallons of petrol per week, and businesses will receive an extra 4 gallons per month. As the government set out its plans, which are expected to last for 4 months, the British public began panic buying of petrol-filling cars and any spare cans they could. Local garages have therefore implemented their own form of petrol rationing for regular customers prior to formal rationing starting next month. Rioting broke out in several areas of the capital city of Caracas, Venezuela. One main area where demonstrators worked is in the western portion of the city in the workers' housing district. These rioters clashed with police force. With new outbreaks of foot and mouth still increasing daily, the National Hunt Committee, on the advice of the Ministry of Agriculture, has canceled all horse racing until further notice. It's not every day a hijacker takes time to refuel. That is what happened on this day. However, word had it this happened while Palestinians took hold of a Dutch jetliner. The guerrillas grabbing hold of the plane were said to have been heading towards Egypt. This refueling took place a day after all the passengers on board the ship were released, along with 8 crew members. The rest of the crew was still stuck on the plane. An Air New Zealand DC-10 crashes into Mount Erebus, Antarctica while on a sightseeing tour, killing all 257 on board. Leaders headed from Tripoli, Lebanon to Syria for a scheduled meeting. They were working on a plan to evacuate Palestinian guerrillas before battle conditions worsened. Serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer died of massive head injuries after he was attacked by other prisoners while cleaning a prison toilet. Gruesome interview. Be warned. The Norwegian voters have voted in a referendum to reject membership of the European Union. President Clinton ends federal 55 miles per hour speed limit that began in 1974 as an energy-saving measure during the Mideast oil embargo. Khadim Fadhil, one of the tens of thousands of persons captured in the 1980s, recalled his story. He revealed all of the unspeakable things that were done to him while he was locked up in the POW prisoners of war camp. He also talked about the scarcities of good food, such as apples or oranges, and roaches in his rice. Bush had made a very important decision to be announced just in time for Thanksgiving Day. Henry Kissinger, the former Secretary of State, was given the responsibility of investigating actions leading up to and after the September 11, 2001 attack. Bush was criticized for making this decision on a day when not many people may have heard about it, and for political reasons as well. Unfortunately, Kissinger was noted for some of his mistakes while involved in the Vietnam War, and that was a major reason critics were cynical. Enron Corp., once the world's largest energy trader employing over 20,000 employees, share price has now dropped below $1 from a high of $90 per share. Following would-be rescuer Dine Inc. backing out of an $8.4 billion deal to take Enron over. Speculation is now on when, not if, Enron will file bankruptcy. On the 2nd of December, Enron did file bankruptcy, and later, as details became available, it was shown that a number of top executives knew of the imminent collapse and dumped their shares at high prices, while still telling investors to buy the shares as a great investment. Consequently, a number of those former executives were indicted on securities fraud and related charges. A nurse and 7 former wardens of a Floridian boot camp for juveniles have been charged with manslaughter over the death of one of their inmates. 14-year-old Martin Lee Anderson died in January just after his arrival at the camp. Whilst the initial post-mortem said that he had died of a blood disorder, a second inquiry concluded that he had suffocated at the hands of the guards. If convicted, the former wardens and the nurse who watched the incident could face up to 30 years in prison. Sheikh Nasser al-Mohammed al-Sabah resigned from his position as Prime Minister of Kuwait after protesters called for his government to leave office amid allegations of bribery. His resignation came days after protesters stormed the parliament demanding him to resign. The country of Albania celebrated its 100-year anniversary of independence from the Ottoman Empire. President Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya vetoed a controversial bill that had been passed in the country's parliament. This was the first time that Kenyatta used his veto since he came to power in April. The law would have put some government control on the media and would have placed heavy fines on media organizations for breaching a code of conduct.